The MP5 from Modern Warfare or the MP5 from Cold War? That is probably my most asked question, and in this video we're going to answer it. This video is going to break down the stats for both guns, comparing them to tell you which one is actually the best. If you enjoy watching weapon comparisons like this, weapon stat breakdowns, and also class setup videos, subscribe to the channel as we want to reach our goal of 5,000 subscribers before the end of the year. The Modern Warfare MP5 has been dominant at close range for so long that now another MP5 has came into the mix. We all want to know, is the Cold War MP5 actually better? If you're talking about overall close quarters weapons, we all know the R9 meta is definitely the best at the moment, and then the Mac 10 is a close second. Those are topics for other videos. This video is going to compare both MP5s. I know you're eager to see the stats, but before we get into that, I do need to mention that testing isn't as accurate as it usually is. We're not able to test these guns in a private lobby. We've had to test it in the trials mode for the game. All the testing was done on AI bots, which move around quite a lot, so it's quite hard to judge certain stats. On the screen here, you'll see the stats for both the Cold War MP5, which is on the left, and then the Modern Warfare MP5, which is on the right. Now keep in mind, these stats don't actually match up with Cold War, the multiplayer game. This is completely different and why we had to do our testing separately. Starting with the Cold War MP5, in the first damage drop-off point, the headshot damage is 47, this then drops off down to 36, then 31, and then for body shot damage, it starts at 33, drops off to 25, and then drops off again to 22. There could be another damage drop-off point further than this, but we weren't able to test that far. Comparing this to the Modern Warfare MP5, the damage profiles are very similar. The only difference is the Modern Warfare MP5 in that very close range actually does slightly more damage. So the headshot damage in those closer ranges is 49, and then the body shot damage is 34. Everything else is exactly the same. And we know for sure that the MP5 from Modern Warfare drops off again after these points here, but like I said, just to keep it consistent, I just wanted to show the 3 damage drop-off points we were able to test. As you can see on screen, the damage values don't really matter too much because in that first damage drop-off point, the shots to kill for both the MP5s is exactly the same. With the Cold War MP5, we tested a rate of fire of 885 rounds per minute, which is about 50 rounds per minute more than its Cold War counterpart from the multiplayer, and it's also about 100 rounds per minute faster than the Modern Warfare MP5. And of course what this means is the time to kill values within that first damage drop-off point, so when you're dealing 33 damage, your time to kill is 475 milliseconds, when you're dealing 25 damage, it's going to be 610 milliseconds, and when you're doing 22 damage, it's going to be 745 milliseconds. As you can see, the Cold War MP5 kills much quicker than the Modern Warfare MP5 at every damage range. Speaking of damage ranges, from what we were able to test with the Cold War MP5, the damage drop-off values are very similar to its multiplayer equivalent. As I said earlier on, this was hard to test because the AI targets were constantly moving, so this was the most accurate results I could come up with in terms of damage drop-off points, and this is almost exactly the same as the Modern Warfare MP5. We tested a base ADS speed of 185 milliseconds for the Cold War MP5, and that is the minute your crosshairs start moving till the background stops moving, and then the base ADS speed on the Modern Warfare MP5 is right around 200 milliseconds, and they're both very similar here, there's not much separating them. Mag size is 30 for both guns, and the reload time for the Cold War MP5 was very surprising. Even at the reload add time, the reload time was 3.5 seconds, which is quite long for an SMG. As you can see, comparing that to the Modern Warfare MP5, that is 1.70 seconds. And lastly, we can see that the bullet velocity for the Cold War MP5 is 250 meters per second, which is exactly the same as it is in the multiplayer. And then bullet velocity for the Modern Warfare MP5 is 537 meters per second, which is definitely much better. For the Cold War MP5, the reload time seems very long, but this is kind of expected because there's a lot of different attachments that affect reload time with the Cold War weapons. Pretty much all of the magazine attachments do give you some sort of reduction to your reload time as well, but we will leave that comparison for another video. Like I stated in my previous video comparing the M4A1 and the XM4, the main issue with the Cold War weapons is its bullet velocity, and that is why with the class setups we made yesterday all include that reinforced heavy barrel that boosts your damage range as well as bullet velocity. If you want to watch that, that'll be linked at the end of this video. One last thing I want to mention regarding Cold War weapons and reloading, it's kind of bugged at the moment. If you try and reload and sprint, it doesn't actually let you reload. It cancels your animation, which is really weird. Hopefully this gets fixed very soon, because with SMGs, you're going to get caught out reloading quite a lot because you're going to be in a lot of close quarters fights. So hopefully this gets fixed very soon, and that way everyone can use the Cold War weapons as intended. The recoil pattern for both of these guns is another important factor we need to consider when comparing them. On the screen here, you'll see the Cold War MP5 in green, the Modern Warfare MP5 in blue. The distance we shot both of these guns was right around 12 meters, and as you can see on the screen, the Cold War MP5 has a lot more vertical recoil, whereas the Modern Warfare MP5 has a lot more horizontal recoil. Personally, after playing with both guns, I think the Modern Warfare MP5 is much more manageable. However, for the Cold War MP5, there is attachments such as the Field Agent Grip and the SOCOM Eliminator that reduce vertical recoil very well, and those can be used to reduce that recoil for the Cold War MP5. This video is not comparing any attachments. Once we can do some more accurate testing on attachments, we will make an updated video on this. So overall recoil for the Modern Warfare MP5 is definitely much easier to handle compared to the Cold War MP5. Some people may stick to the Modern Warfare version of the gun for this reason alone, just because they might not like to manage that vertical recoil. If you looked at this recoil chart for the Cold War MP5 inside Warzone, this looks nothing like our previous charts from the multiplayer. So the developers have obviously adjusted this so that it feels different to the Modern Warfare MP5. As always, the last thing we need to consider is hipfire accuracy. Hipfiring with SMGs, let alone MP5s, is very important. And most of the time when I'm using an MP5 inside Warzone, I don't even aim down sights. So like I said, this is a very important thing to consider when using MP5s. On the screen now, you'll see the hipfire chart for both the Cold War MP5, which is again in green, and the Modern Warfare MP5, which is again in blue. I fired these bullets round about 4 meters away from the wall, and these are the charts that we came up with. Of course, if you're closer, the bullet spread will be less, and if you're further away, the bullet spread will be more. But overall, both of these guns are very accurate in terms of hipfire accuracy, as they should be. You won't have any problems hipfiring with either one of these two guns, but overall, I do think the Modern Warfare MP5 does have the tighter hipfire grouping. Attachments could completely change this answer, however, if the 5mm laser on the Cold War weapons is much stronger than the 5mm laser on the Modern Warfare weapons, but again, this testing will be done in future videos. The answer for this video is not quite as easy as the answer for the M4 video, because if you don't like controlling recoil, you might want to stick with the Modern Warfare MP5, but if you want the fastest possible time to kill at close range, the Cold War MP5 is definitely the best option. Overall handling stats are very similar anyway, so there's not much that separates them there. And my personal favourite is the Cold War MP5, just because I prefer a faster time to kill. If you enjoyed this video, leave us a like, as we're one of the very first people to release a video like this, and it takes a while to compile all the stats together. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.